$3 trillion for the real cost of this war is probably underestimated, because the war just keeps going on and on and on, and they will not even take off the table the option of spreading the war. Because right now there are many individuals in Washington who think that this administration, before leaving office, may well bomb Iran. That makes no sense whatsoever. We don't need to spread this war. We need to end the war. The troops right now are really being pushed. The morale is low. The qualifications to get in the military are dropping precipitously. The individuals are sent back rather rapidly, and their stays are extended, although now it's been announced that they only have to stay 12 months. But the devastation to so many of those who have come back in the shortage. The other day, an individual described, well, there's really a draft going on. If you're called up after you've been over there for 3 times and you've been told that you could get out after 5 years and you can't get out and you get sent back over, you've really been drafted. But other individuals are really complaining about the fact that they're in the Navy or the Air Force for precise reasons, because they joined and wanted to serve in those branches. They are now being sent over because they're short soldiers driving trucks in Iraq. They're being sent over there to drive those trucks, and they're not very happy about it. The equipment's in bad shape, and something has to come to an end. Now, if those who want to spread the war and bomb Iran have their way, this is going to be devastating. There's going to be a massive expansion of the war, and I suspect that there's a 50-50 chance that there will be a draft. I say no to any possibility of a draft for young people. And we must realize, if the draft comes back, it won't be just for the men. It will be for the women as well in the age in which we live. So this is something that is very serious. But the question is really, can we end this more gracefully? They say that it will be chaotic if we leave. Well, it's chaotic if we go and stay, and this is what it's all about. We went under false pretense, and they say, well, you can't leave because it'll be a mess. Well, we went over there, supposedly one of the reasons was to protect our oil. Well, you know, oil was $27 a barrel. I mean, the protection wasn't all that good. Now it's $107, $108, $111 a barrel, and we're over there just making things that much worse. During the 60s, when I was in the military, I did not actually go to Vietnam. But the argument always was, oh, no, we can't come home and be chaos, and we've invested too much. That means everybody that died will have died in vain. And, well, you know, continuing to allow people to die in order to make sure the previous ones didn't die in vain, when does it end? If you can't say the end of the war. But in the 60s, they said we can't leave, and yet we had to leave under terrible circumstances. I mean, it was really bad. But what has happened in Vietnam? Not immediately, but in due time, after 20 years of the French and Americans telling the Vietnamese what to do with their country, you know, finally we allow the Vietnamese to do what with their country they want. And the argument was we can't leave because there would be a domino effect and the whole Southeast Asia would be taken over by communism. Well, it didn't happen. You know, the communists are better capitalists than we are today. They're our banker, for goodness sake. So it didn't happen. And Vietnam, what has happened to Vietnam? Their president comes here, visits with us. We trade with Vietnam. We have good friendly relationship. We invest in Vietnam. So we achieved in peace what could not be achieved in war for over 20 years. I say let's take the advice of the Founding Fathers. Let's talk to people, trade with people, be friends with people, work toward improving and taking care of our imperfections and not pretending that we can take care of the imperfections of everybody else around the world. Now, the wonderful thing about finding a solution is that there is one, and it's an economic and it's a military solution. that if we can just come to the agreement in this country that we ought to have a more sensible foreign policy, that non-intervention makes sense, that intervention in policing the world makes no sense, and that if we continue to do it, we're going to, destroy ourselves financially as well as the empire will collapse anyway. What we need to do is just change our policy, as simple as that. And the policy should be non-intervention. People say, oh, no, that's isolationism. You want to live behind closed doors. No, it has nothing to do with isolationism. I'm not a protectionist. I don't believe in protection. I believe in trading and traveling and friendship. But I just don't believe we should be putting troops in now 130 countries. We have 700 military bases around the world. We need to bring the troops home, not only from the Middle East, but we need to bring our troops home from Korea and Japan and Europe as well. Now that would make us safer, because the greatest incentive to be attacked by a terrorist, a desperate terrorist, and there are probably hundreds who would like to do it. Not thousands and not millions, but they are dedicated to attacking us because we're in their face, on their land, occupying their territories. And how would we act if the Chinese were so bold and so strong that they could come here and say that they have to protect their oil in the Gulf of Mexico and they had bases on this country? Believe me, the American people would be unified, Republicans and Democrats and independents, and we would all believe in the Second Amendment if they were doing that to us. So by coming home, we would have a greatly reduced threat by terrorism. Today, it's increased. It's probably worse than ever. And our military is in worse shape than ever. So therefore, we are not providing for national defense. That's our job. So the foreign policy has distracted from the very job that we have, one of the most important functions of the federal government. So by bringing the troops home now, rather than waiting until we have to crawl home with a tail between our legs because we're flat out broke, is that we can survive financially. We can start protecting civil liberties. Today, under this guise of built-up fear about the threat of terrorists and the wars going on, that we have become so complacent that we have sacrificed our personal liberties and our privacy, that we allow our government to spy on every single thing we do. And the violation of our privacy with warrants, searches without warrants, the rejections of habeas corpus and the military courts and torture, all these things that we have accepted. We don't need any of that, and we would have this a lot less desire or fear build up into us that we sacrifice so much. And financially, we could solve our problems. We wouldn't save hundreds of millions. We wouldn't save tens of billions. We would save hundreds of billions of dollars. So we have troops, we bring them home. Guess where they would spend their money? In Europe? No, they'd be spending it here at home. You know, that would help our economy. That wouldn't hurt us. And besides, it wouldn't weaken us. It would strengthen us. But we could save hundreds of billions of dollars. We could balance our budget and actually whittle away at the debt, restore some confidence into the dollar. But not only that, that is the only way we can take care of those individuals who have become dependent on the government. Some of those programs should have never started, because technically they're not constitutional. But you don't address that first. That's what's happening in Washington. They'll go after children's health care and pretend that's the conservative position. You know, that's not the way to do it. Let's stop this wild militaristic spending, subsidies to the military-industrial complex, which, fortunately for us, that President Eisenhower introduced that term and warned us about. And yet it's onward. We still subsidize the military-industrial complex. But we can bring those troops home and solve so many problems. We would have a stronger national defense, and I believe we would be so much safer. You know, about 100 years ago, the idea of free